Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. I hope you are doing well today. We are today going to look at one of the manoeuvres that you are going to have to do on your driving test. Today we're looking at forward bay parking. Okay, just to give you some background around what the manoeuvre is going to be like. Obviously, during your test, you're asked to do one of the 4 manoeuvres. You do not have to do all of them unless you're on an extended test, potentially. You do not have to do all of the manoeuvres on a normal learner driver test. So, forward bay parking. It was done out en route. So you'd be driving along on your route, following the sat nav or just following the directions of the examiner, and then they will ask you to turn off into a car park somewhere. They'll direct you where to go. And then they'll ask you just to select a bay and drive in forwards. Once you've driven in forwards, they'll say, hopefully you're in the bay, they'll say thank you very much. They'll get you to reverse out, and then you'll drive back out into rejoin the route. You'll probably only be in the car park for less than 5 minutes. It does not a very big part of your test at all. The important thing to remember with a manoeuvre is that you can, especially with the parking, if you're not in the bay, you can have another go. You can reverse yourself back out and drive back in and get yourself finished within the space. You don't have to do it in one go. One go's easier for you generally because you haven't got the pressure and then like extra anxiety around making sure you do it properly and get your correction right. It just takes the pressure off. If it's in first time, you know it's done, you're going to reverse out and drive on. The most important part of any manoeuvre is your observations. So with all of your manoeuvring, observations are the most important part. Like I've already said, you can redo your positioning. You cannot redo an observation that you've missed. So if you miss the fact that there's a car about to go behind you when you're going to reverse out, or you miss that there's going to be a person walking behind you, or you just don't check at all, it doesn't matter how perfectly you've parked the car and how perfectly you've reversed it out. If you've missed the fact that you've caused somebody else to stop or you've nearly hit someone, you're going to fail. So the keys to success for this are 3. With every manoeuvre, you need to be doing it slowly, so walking pace ideally. Then the 2 specific for this this manoeuvre is you want to have as much space as possible away from the space you intend to go in. So if you're parking to a bay to your right, you want the car as far left as you can get it, really. And vice versa, one to the left, you're going to want the car as far to the right as possible, really. This gives you the space to turn in without cutting across the other bays, and it makes it easier to get the car in and straighten the wheels up. The second thing is that you leave your steering as late as possible because you want a nice sharp, like almost like try and make as much of a 90-degree turn in as possible. You don't want to turn into this space and turn nice and gently because you'll end up with the car on a funny angle, and it's really hard to get the car and the wheels straight if you've done that. So late steering and lots of it all the way to full lock in general. So with that said, we'll talk about briefly what can go wrong with this manoeuvre. So things that can go wrong are you finish the manoeuvre and you think you're in the space but you're over the line to the left or the right. If you've not managed to get the car in the space, that is a problem. If you're not sure, make a correction. You'll take a driver fault for it, but you won't fail for making a correction as long as you make it safely. And then the other things that can go wrong are you overshoot the space, so you go out the front of the space. That would be a fail. You can't go out the front, you have to stay within the lines of the space at the front of the space. Or you stop the car short of the space. It's generally the only thing that goes wrong is not being in the space in that sense for the position of the car. The other thing that can go wrong is that you fail to do any observations. If you don't do sufficient observations, like we've already said, you will fail. So remember, the position is important, but not as important as your observations, and that you can redo your position in. So with that said, let's go and have a look at I'll go and demonstrate a good one, getting the car in the space. So for this one, we're going to go to the right. So we pulled into the car park. The examiner's asked us to park. I've selected my space to the right. So I'm going to line up here, get my mirror in the middle of my space, and I'll show you that on the screen there. So the mirror is pointing between the 2 lines of the space. Because I've stopped, I'm going to just have a quick check around, make sure it's all still safe. I'm then going to move the car slightly and feed the steering into full lock. The car comes around, and then as the car starts to straighten up, I straighten the wheels back up and stop when I've got the car in the space and the line at the front of the car, so the front line of the space that runs along the front of the car, stops just under my mirror. That's a good gauge for the front of the car being level with the front of the space. And then we should be in, and I'll show you on screen the sort of gap that we've got out the side. So that gap is good. You know you're going to be in the space. When you open the door, or if you open the door, if you're not confident that you're in, and it's always worth a check. Handbrake and neutral and have a check. If you're not sure you're in the space, open the door. If you cannot see your line, you are clearly over it. If you open your door and you've got miles of space to your line, you're clearly over the other one. So reverse back out, reverse out till you can see the space, come out properly and see the space, and then drive back into it, because you should then know which way you need to steer, and drive nice and slowly, move your wheel, make your correction, and get the car back in. And then at this point we're going to be asked to reverse out of the space. So reversing out, first thing we do is I would go into reverse, let everyone know what we intend to do, then have a good check around. So blind spots, all your mirrors, blind spot, quick check of my camera, no one there. Handbrake comes off and the car comes out backwards in a straight line to start with for a little bit. And then we start steering, making sure we've either followed the direction of the examiner, so if he or she's told us to reverse out to the left or the right, make sure we've done that, or you're following the direction of the car park. Now have a good check around again, make sure nothing's coming, and then drive off and drive out the car park, following the arrows or the instructions of your examiner. So that just about wraps that one up. There's not a huge amount to it. The key to all of your manoeuvres is practice and repeating it correctly. So remember, take your time, make it slow, keep the car slow, keep your observations very good. All the time you're reversing out, make sure you're checking around. Don't rely on a camera if you've got one. Make sure you're checking your blind spots and out that back window whilst you're reversing. And yeah, late steering and lots of space away from the space you intend to go into. And that's all on the subject of forward bay parking. Hope you found it interesting, hope you found it useful. Don't forget, like and subscribe. That tells YouTube that we're doing the right things. And I'll see you all again soon on the next one.